Kara writes, is there a tutorial on figuring out the cycle, a step-by-step? I'm having trouble identifying who is a withdrawer and who is a pursuer.
Kara, track each partner's behavior and start with the behavior, because usually the behaviors are more obvious or the most obvious element of the couple's negative pattern of interaction. One of them most likely will be turning up the emotional heat behaviorally. That means they criticize, they blame, they go closer to the issue, they make the issue big, they make mountains out of molehills, everything's a fire, everything's big emotionally. And then another style of behavior, another theme of behaviors will be shutting down, going quiet, clamming up, backing away, working longer, taking trips, volunteering for business trips, being away from the house longer. And so you can hear in those behavioral categories, one, blaming, criticizing is clearly a pursuer. When you think behaviorally, we know behaviors are driven by emotion. We know emotion and attachment are the universal first language, two sides of the same coin, always interplaying emotion and attachment. Pursuer turns up the emotional heat behaviorally. She's pushy, pokey, proddy, critical, edgy, demanding, not nice, yells a lot, rager. That comes with a lot of secondary emotions. So we're going to get the behaviors from a process perspective. You turn up the emotional heat by criticizing, by making it bigger. And then you get the secondary emotion that comes with those behaviors, because no behavior ever comes without any emotion. Emotion and behavior are always embedded together. Validate secondary in order to then make space to conjecture about primary. So in stage one, when you're not sure who's a pursuer, who's a withdrawer, track their behaviors, get in a collaborative conversation about what they see themselves do when they're in a fight with each other.
So step one, track their behaviors. Who is turning up the emotional heat? Who is turning down the emotional heat?
Step two would be track secondary emotion that comes with that behavior.
So when I blame, it's usually because I'm angry.
Yeah. And then step three would be see if you can conjecture and start making space. Once you validate secondary of step two, see if you can conjecture and start making space for primary emotion.
And you make space for primary emotion, even in stage one, by saying something like, what happens on the inside here? What's happening to your heart?
The strength of your anger correlates with the depth of your pain. Does something like that fit? There's a lot of pain there.
Okay.
This unprocessed pain, correct me, client, but this unprocessed pain is what drives you to follow your partner around the house.
Mm-hmm.
You followed him or her out the driveway. Don't leave me. Don't drive away. This is important. We need to talk. Because attachment styles are coping strategies. So then from these three elements, behavior, secondary emotion, primary emotion, we're starting to get a working hypothesis of each partner's insecure adult attachment style, which is anxious, which in EFT is the approximation is called pursuer, which is avoidant EFT approximation called the withdrawer, or the fearful avoidant or chaotic. Luckily, mammals cope in three insecure ways, and it's very characteristic and predictable. Kara, have this conversation with your clients out loud.
Yeah.
Tell them these things. Tell them what you're listening for. Tell them where you're confused. Tell them what you're not quite clear on. And so you guys have heard me all say, if I was a fly on the wall, what would I see you do? And what would I hear you say?
So if I'm sitting with a couple and I'm like, who's the pursuer? Who's the withdrawer? I could say to my couple, you guys, one of the first parts of EFT is figuring out who tends to pursue and who tends to withdraw. And I get lost because I thought that you might be the withdrawer, but here I see you turning up the emotional heat. It sounds like that you're blaming, is that an okay word? And so, but you're the withdrawer. So help me understand you guys help me figure this out.
We figure it out together.
We figure it out together. It's collaborative. I'm not the wizard behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? What a relief.
What a relief.
A few things, Jen, we should add to Kara's answer is that pursue withdraw is the classic pattern, but not every couple is going to fit in the classic pattern because there are reactive cycles. So when an EFT therapist is having trouble figuring out who's a pursuer and who's a withdrawer, that's often a sign that your client's in a reactive pattern or one of them is a trauma survivor with that fearful avoidant pattern, which is a hybrid of pursue withdraw, which means that one person does both strategies, pursue and withdraw. So it's complicated or multimodal, as we say when we teach in the externship. We're talking now the very simple classic pursue withdraw, but when a couple isn't that, then you want to track how often do you turn up the heat? Again, give me a ballpark percentage rate. 50-50, 85-15%. How often do you withdraw and where do you get your most comfort? When you're alone, to get away from the storm of your partner. And so you just get in this lovely, attuned, attachment-based, collaborative conversation about what they know about their own steps in their dance with their partner. And in fact, maybe we would tell Kara, it's not something you're supposed to figure out all by yourself if you're trying to.
You share what you know.
Yeah.
You share what they know.
Yeah.
And you come to an agreement.
Yeah.
And you know the map, so you know what comes next.
Yeah. In the end, the reality is we're understanding each partner's attachment styles to help them de-escalate their negative pattern. There are sometimes I don't get the clear interactional pattern, each partner's attachment style, until they're more de-escalated because it's clear. So if you're uncertain and you've collaborated as much as you can with the couple and you've got great rapport, then just start going to find primary emotion. That will help them start to interrupt their steps in the dance from a bottom-up perspective. So you gather the data that they're aware of. If I were a fly on the wall, what would I see? What do you do? What do you say to yourself? What would I hear you say out loud? All those kind of assessment questions that you can think of. Imagine, put yourself in the client's position and imagine what you would want your therapist to ask you when you're in a row with your most important other. And then get as much clarity as you can, and then keep doing EFT, because then by the time you get to the end of stage one and the couple's de-escalated, their spots in the dance, their positions in the cycle will be much clearer.
I have two more questions. One, I just saw Benny wrote in, how would I tell the clients the rationale, why it's important to identify who's the pursuer and who's the withdrawer?
Because it gives you data about how they're each coping with their distress. Because there are classic fears associated with each attachment style. The pursuer's classic fear is to not feel important, to not matter. The withdrawer's classic fear is to feel inadequate. And even though this is just all more data, more content, those fears inform my attunement when I start going for the primary emotion of step 3.
So you're saying part of the benefit of learning who's the withdrawer and who's the pursuer is that along with knowing who withdraws and who pursues, you also get a core piece of their pain, their attachment pain.
And I get a quick glimpse into a better way to work with them, because I'm going to approach a pursuer differently with my evocative questions than I will a withdrawer.
Okay.
It informs how I deliver my interventions.
Tell me if this feels true to you too. Well, if a person knows that they withdraw, they know their baseline coping, you can help them understand what they could do differently ultimately in those key moments when their instinct is to withdraw, that they could stay present, that they could talk and send a ping from their inner world.
I think you're right, Jen. I think you're onto something, that we want our clients to have a cognitive overview, so because that will give them handles when they're in distress at home outside of session.
Yeah.
So, right. Jen said, okay, when I feel overwhelmed, my best coping strategy is to retreat. I think I just retreated. I've retreated. Note to self, this is happening. And so when couples insist upon homework in stage 1, I'll say, track your behaviors and how many times do you end up withdrawing? How many times do you end up pursuing? And then if the next week's homework is driven by what emotion on the inside. And so those fears, because fear, attachment theory is a theory of threat management. Fear is the way mammals get a signal of threat. Fear is our threat detection system. And so those fears come alive for all humans, cradle to grave. And suddenly we're in the other room. Or suddenly we've raised our voice and we took notice. And so giving your clients the overview and asking them to track their behaviors, that's why with the beginning of Kara's answer to her question is track the behaviors, because they're often the most obvious.
Right.
And it's something our clients can catch themselves. They can catch their behaviors, or their partner will know their behavior. I know exactly what you do.
I can tell you what you do, right?
Right. You want me to tell you what he or she does?
Yeah. Yeah. For more hot tips on emotionally focused therapy, go to theeftcafe.com and sign up for our newsletter where you will receive short little clips like the one you just watched.